Hello, my name is Brittany Deigh. I am a psychic medium and spiritual teacher. My divine purpose is to assist in the expansion of the collective consciousness and to help you become more connected with the divine. This is a space to remember all that you truly are and ignite the possibilities of your highest potential. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Addicted Household Recovery. Thank you guys so much for being here. This episode might be a little bit heavy, so just throwing that out there, but I think it's really important to talk about how our traumas will recycle themselves into our reality in order for us to move through them, in order for us to deal with them, even if it's not with that person, right? Because sometimes that person's not willing to move through it with you. And so these things will recycle in your reality with other people in order for you to heal them and to move through them. And so it's a little bit of a story time today, but also we'll be talking, there will be some sprinkles of wisdom and truth. But it's story time today. So, as some of you guys know, if you've been listening to the podcast, I experienced, a lot of violence in my, upbringing and, domestic abuse within the house, physical abuse. And it became this thing where, I would basically be shamed, and it was like not an option. It felt truly in my heart like not an option to call the police, to file a report, or to tell a counselor at school, or my mom always said, you need to tell me, if this happens or this happens, you need to tell me. And anytime that anyone did call the cops, like my stepdad did one time, and it was like everybody was in flames for him actually, addressing the issue and calling the cops and not trying to deal with it with just, within the household. And so it was always this like known thing that you don't call the police. We don't get the police involved. If something's happening, you just go tell mom. And that's not to say that, she did a poor job at addressing it, but I think that it was just a challenging situation, and nobody wants the cops to get involved, and it's understandable, but it also created a really traumatic belief in my system that when someone put their hands on me, or when someone was abusive to me or stole from me or any of those things, I wouldn't call the police. I would just either deal with it or try and retaliate in some way, or try and get back, or try and get my money back, or whatever it was. I remember specifically this one time I was dating this guy in high school, and like I said, I grew up in physical abuse, so my tolerance for violence is much higher than most people, which I'm working on actively right now. And this boyfriend that I was dating at the time, he was drinking. We were all drinking. We were at the pool. There was this like apartment complex downtown at the U of L campus, and that's a college, university, and everyone would go hang out at the pool up at the Province, and we were at the pool and we were drinking and this and that, and him and his friend, we all went to the gas station, him, his friend, and then me, and then his friend's girlfriend. It was like kind of like the two couples hung out a lot, and just to, forewarning on this story, it was a very abusive relationship in so many other ways. Just really sexually abusive and verbally abusive, and I was just always being treated like literal trash, like a piece of garbage. And somehow, for some reason, that's what I was used to, so I just kept going back, and I kept being okay with it and pretending like it was not that big of a deal. Like I said, my tolerance for this behavior was just really high in my childhood. And so, we were at the gas station, he went in for something, And I don't even know what happened. I think I either got frustrated that he was talking to a girl or he was taking too long or something happened where me and the girl that were in the back of the car, we got like irritated and pissed off at them. And then like she used to get really, she was yelling, screaming a lot. Like she was a very big girl, thick, and like took up a lot of space. And she was really helping me with taking up space, you know, and not being so little all the time. But so she gets out and she's like yelling at her boyfriend. And then I, you know, am like yelling at my boyfriend, and I'm like, you know, backing her up, and I'm like, you guys shouldn't have been doing that, or whatever it was. I don't remember exactly. But I do remember that in the middle of the gas station parking lot, he pushed me down to my knees, and I was in just a cover up for my bathing suit, and my knees scraped the concrete. And this was in like not a great part of town. So like it was like the really like, it wasn't flat concrete. It was like the, you know, like there's potholes and shit, and it's like janky concrete. And I scrape my knees and I fall to my hands, and then he kicks my back so that way I fall all the way to the ground. And I just laid there and I cried and I cried. And I remember the girl ran over to me, and then she looked back at her boyfriend, and her boyfriend looked at my boyfriend at the time and was like, yo, dude, we need to get the fuck out of here. Like, what the fuck did you just do, you know? And so they jump in the car and hightail out of there. And me and her are I'm just laying on the ground in the parking lot, you know, bloody and beaten. And she's just like, dude, I'm so sorry. Like, what the fuck? I did not expect this to happen, you know? Like, are you okay? And she's like trying to help me up, and people are coming over, and somebody called the cops, and, you know, and I could hear the sirens coming to the gas station, and I couldn't really walk. My knees were really fucking hurt, and they were scraped up and scratched. And I could hear the sirens coming, and I remember just like me, you know, I put my arm over her shoulder, and I'm limping away, and we're just like trying to get out of there as fast as possible. And the sad part is that I actually went back to him that night. That night I ended up sleeping with him. You know, we stayed over at his friend's house, and it's just like, what the fuck, Brittany? You're like covered in the scratches from him literally just beating you that afternoon. It's really wild. Like the battered woman syndrome, you know, that can happen in someone's reality. And this happened in multiple relationships following that, you know, it happened, I would say, in almost every relationship following that. And then it got to a point, you know, in my last relationship, I finally started like sticking up for myself, if that makes sense. And then I would like fight back, but then I didn't like that either, because now I'm putting my hands on somebody, and that's really uncomfortable. And luckily, you know, the union that I'm in now, my partner is incredible, and he's been very understanding. I did put my hands on him one time, and I hit him in the back of the head, and that's really, really hard. Like I can feel my heart just dropping and owning that, but it did happen. And it was in a public setting, in a parking lot. And thank God, you know, that he's such a strong man and is really able to see past my traumas and see past, you know, my experiences. And, you know, thankfully I'm able to own my shit and really truly make amends and do my part to change my behavior and assure him that will never, ever, ever happen again. And we have a very healthy union. You know, that was whenever we were in the very beginning of our relationship, and a lot of my traumas were getting brought up. And I didn't know how to handle it. I was pregnant and dealing with antenatal depression, and not to make excuses by any means, is violence and abuse is never okay. I just want to make that very clear. It doesn't matter if you're under the influence of substances. It doesn't matter if you're angry and steaming. It does not matter. Physical abuse is never okay. And so, I really truly feel like I healed through that with him. It was the first man that didn't put his hands on me. And he has never put his hands on me, no matter how angry he's gotten, at times. He has never, ever, ever. And so it was a really divine mirror, because it was like, Brittany, you did this now. This is a behavior that you have adopted, and you need to address this. And I really feel and truly feel like I have. And he has said the same. He says he definitely feels safe and that would never happen again. So, but, talking about our traumas recycling, my neighbor, I was walking my daughter, and, she's 3 months old, and I'm walking in this little side street, and I'm probably like 20, 25 feet away from them. And I had heard the neighbors arguing. It's this woman who has her granddaughter and her partner, they just had a baby. And so she took them in, I was walking my baby, and I had heard them arguing outside for like a few weeks leading up to that. But it was one of those things. I mean, our backyards are literally in each other's backyards, but it was one of those things that I was just kind of looked the other way, and I was like, it's not my business. They're on their property. They're not coming over here. But this day I was, walking my daughter in the stroller. And this is actually one of the first times that we were out and about, because she had just been born. She was just newborn, 3 months old. And I had heard some arguing, but where I was in the street, I couldn't see it from behind the house. And then as soon as I came around the side of the house where I could see them in their driveway, she was trying to get out of the car. And he put the car in reverse and slammed on the gas. And I watched her get caught underneath the door and get ran over by the car. And immediately, I'm like astounded that I just witnessed this. And I run over to her and I'm like, are you okay? And he stops the car. As soon as he realizes he ran her over, he puts the car in park. He opens the door to get out. And I'm like, I need you to stay exactly where you are. Please do not take any more steps forward. And he didn't, and I said to her, are you okay? What can I do? Do I need to call the police? And I shouldn't have. Now looking back, that was my programming, right? Where it's like, no, you do need to call the police. You just witnessed someone getting run over with a car, and this is domestic abuse, and this is what the police are for. And, she was like, I'm fine, battered woman, and she goes stumbling inside, and then he goes speeding off. He gets in his car and goes speeding off. And they were really close. When he threw that car in reverse, I mean, God forbid, he wasn't looking around. God forbid me and Gaia were behind him. He could have easily ran me and my daughter over 100%. And I called my neighbor, the one who owns the house, the grandmother, and I told her, and just giving you guys a little tip here, I just felt called for some reason to pick up my rose quartz and put it over my heart. So just like really when you're talking about your traumas, when you're dealing with your traumas, make sure to always take care of yourself and nurture yourself and do what you really feel like called to do. Don't ignore your intuitive feelings. It's really important. And so, I call the neighbor and I tell her what happened. And I'm like, I really didn't know what to do. I felt like I should have called the police, but I wanted to call you and tell you what was happening. And it's so interesting because now looking back, I'm like, this is literally exactly how I was trained in my household. Like, don't call the police, call mom. And she'll address the issue, right? Like as if she has the ability to control these people, this couple with their child, living in her household. And she has no true ability to control them. She can threaten to kick them out or whatever, but she has no true ability to control these people's behavior. And I you know, it sat on my heart, and I lived in fear, thinking, you know, maybe he's gonna smash my window because I ratted on him, and this and that, and all these things, right, that I would experience from my brother if I ever ratted on him. You know, there was always some kind of retaliation and some kind of abuse or some kind of something. I was punished, and so then, you know, it seemed like almost the situation had been dealt with. It kind of died out, and my fear, you know, of them either smashing in a window or doing anything like that, it kind of died out. And actually, weird just came to me. I actually, at a store here locally, a baby store here, I pulled up directly, of all the places in the parking lot to park, I pulled up directly next to their car. This was probably like 2 or 3 months after. And I saw him get out of the car, and I'm like, why is that dude so familiar? And then whenever he came back, I just was sitting in my car getting some work done. And then whenever he walked back out to the car, I was trying to finish this up before I went in. I was like, oh my God, that's the dude. And like the girl was driving the car. Holy shit, that's them right there, literally right next to me. Those things are not coincidences, guys. And so I'm just like, okay, we're moving through this energy, you know, like we're moving through this. And so then just yesterday, that happened, that incident, you know, when she got ran over by the car right in front of me, was September 20th. And it is March 2nd today. And this was yesterday, March 1st, that I heard them arguing and screaming again outside. And this time, luckily, I wasn't already outside, so I just looked out the window, and I saw him throw some box at her. You know, she got out of the car because they were arguing. They were in the street, and he threw some box at her when she was standing in the lawn, and he was in the street. And then she just, you know, picked up the box and walked away with her head down, whimpering, you know, and crying. And then he's screaming at her, you know, top of his lungs, like, you fucking bitch, blah, you know, all this stuff. And then, you know, slams on the gas and speeds away. And I thought to myself, I should call the cops. And instead, I didn't call the cops, and I texted the grandmother, and I said, they were arguing again out in the street. The next time this happens, I'm going to call the police immediately. And I was in the bathroom washing my face, and I remember just being like, God, what is this about? What is this showing me? Because now I'm texting DJ, and I'm like, I want to get security cameras. I want to, like, this doesn't feel safe to me. I walk on that street, on that little, it's a little side street. I walk there every day. I'm like, I'm not going for a walk today. Like, I don't feel fucking safe, you know? And I'm like, I hate living like this. And I'm in there doing my facial regime, and I'm like, God, what is this offering me? What is this about right now? And it just came to me so clearly. Trust yourself. Trust yourself. And it's like, I was literally doing exactly what I had been programmed to do, which was, instead of calling the police, which is what my inner voice told me to do, I was telling the mom, right? The grandmother of the situation, just like I always did in my whole upbringing. And so, you know, I actually ended up exchanging and talking to my coach about it. And you know, that was a really helpful conversation. And then I went to the gym, and I fucking raged out. I was so angry. I was so resentful. I couldn't believe that this, you know, it had bubbled up so much of the violence that I had dealt with, the abuse that I had dealt with. I'm just like, fuck this shit. Like, I was so angry. And I'm like, you know, I'm running and I'm punching the air, and I'm just like raging out in the middle of Planet Fitness. And then I finally got to this point after, really raging for a good 30, 40 minutes. I got to this breaking point where I didn't cry really hard. I sometimes I bawl and cry and I don't care where I am, but I didn't cry really hard. These tears started dropping from my face. And then I got to this moment on the other side and I felt relief, and I felt like this anger and this rage in me had finally got an opportunity to express itself and move through me. And so what I did is I actually went on the next machine and the little glider thing, and I started listening to some songs that I really love. And then I'm like dancing and I'm like waving my hands around in the air and I'm like, yes, like this is what I want to be feeling. This is what I want to be experiencing. I don't want to be so angry and so involved with this situation. And then I did some yoga afterwards to really embody and come back into a state of balance, into peace. And then whenever I came home, I did a little ritual and I filed a police report online. And it was so healing and so empowering for my inner child, who never told anyone anything about what was going on, who never told the school counselor, who never called the police, who never spoke up. And, I know that the police reports, more than likely they're not going to come to this person's house, but I do feel safe because there is now a paper trail. And so if anything does happen, if anyone does smash my window or anyone does anything like this, I have proof of, listen, these are these events. This is when I filed the report and I asked you guys to address this. And if anything does happen again in front of my eyes, I will call the police. I won't hesitate and I won't threaten, and say to this woman, if this happens again, I'm going to call the police. Like, no, I'm just going to trust my intuition. I'm just going to trust myself and do what is really and truly in alignment and integrity to me. And so it's just so interesting how our traumas, they will recycle in your reality, whether it has to do with the person who hurt you or the people in your life. No matter what, you will end up reliving because you're still experiencing that in your body, in your energy, in your existence, right? These things are stored in the body. You will end up manifesting and attracting and aligning with the vibration that is inside of you. And there will be these recycled traumas. And I really invite you to see these as an opportunity to collapse that old timeline and that old story, and to empower yourself and to do what is true to you, and not keep betraying yourself and doing what you were told to do. Especially, you're an adult now, right? And maybe I do have some teens listening to this, which I know it feels a little bit more disempowering, but you can contact your school counselor. Like, it doesn't matter what ruckus it calls. You have to take care of yourself. You have to do what your intuition is truly telling you to do. And if someone is asking you to betray yourself in order to fulfill what their desire is, they're in their sickness, and you can honor that, but you have to heal, and you have to get out of your cycle of sickness. And so these are opportunities to collapse these timelines. I made a whole ritual of I'm gonna do my light and my sage and my crystals and I'm sitting there and filing this police report, and it was like so liberating to finally do what I wanted to do back in September, what I wanted to do when I saw it in the first place. And I denied my own truth because of what I had always been told to do in my childhood. But now I'm doing what my true truth and authenticity really actually is telling me to do. And that's recovery. That's what's important. That's living in alignment. And that's what will bring you to a greater state of health and wholeness. And you won't keep perpetuating the sickness. You won't keep perpetuating these recycled traumas, because these are your opportunities to collapse them. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed that episode. Please subscribe, leave a review. And if this was impactful for you at all, please share it with others. This is how we can help each other. Much love and namaste.